Everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Sacramento Kings are trying to dump Malik Monk. Should the Lakers oblige? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free. It is never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube, of course, is where you can go hang out with over 36,000 subscribers to the channel, all of whom Andy are they're watching, they're waiting, they're getting ready for the summer to be over so we can get on with this Lakers basketball thing, but still plenty to get into over the course of today's show. We are going to let you know that Sacramento, they're trying to get rid of Malik Monk to bring in Russell Westbrook, which is weird. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we will start with Luka Doncic and Team Slovenia as soon as we let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase, Andy. It was the final day of preparation for Slovenia ahead of EuroBasket, and they took one on the chin against Serbia on Thursday. Of course, Serbia led by Nikola Jokic. They've got a Bogdanovic on there. There's like players all over the NBA who are playing for Serbia as well. Not necessarily unexpected, but Slovenia loses. Luka, though, despite receiving I think, Andy, you could argue an enormous amount of attention from Serbia's defense in the game on Thursday.
Some might say all of it.
Yeah, they were like up 30 and still double teaming him, picking him up full court. Like they were not screwing around when it came to Luka. In a relatively short minutes, Luka still looked good, played pretty well. But his squad was certainly not up to the task of taking down Serbia on Thursday.
He finished with 17 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. As you said, did not play a ton of minutes, got to the line 9 times. Made 7 of them. The outside shot is still behind everything else right now. He was 2 of 10 from 3 against Serbia. We mentioned the last game against Great Britain. I believe he was 2 of 11. That being said, though, the other stuff is what is more significant to me right now, insofar as Luka getting back his basketball timing and sort of what we're looking for in terms of results from the skinny Luka transformation. He has looked well everywhere else, and the three-point shot, is going to be better than it's been this offseason once the regular season rolls around, and B, three-point shooting is the area of Luka's game that obviously he is a good three-point shooter, and at times he can be a deadly three-point shooter, but that's never been, I think, among the stronger parts of his game, stronger being relative because he's offensively, arguably the best all-around player in the game, just on that side of the ball. So it's all very relative. But there are other areas in which Luka has been looking like himself. I expect that to continue. Plus, we should mention, because I think people found this delightful, the tweet went viral. Luka was spotted out by someone named Gabriele Gabatelli, I believe, and tweeted out this morning, Slovenian auto grill, me and my friends go in to get a refill of Lasco beer. There you go. At the bar, there's a really tall guy in flip-flops. He's drinking a coffee. Very important, drinking a coffee, because everybody monitors Luka's beer intake. He's with another man. I look closer. It's Doncic. I almost didn't recognize him. 15 kilograms lighter, super fit. I say, Luka, and he smiles. He gestures for me to step outside in the parking lot. He greets me and my friends, takes photos with me, says the injury from the friendly match. This is referring back to earlier in the friendly period. No big deal. Super pumped for the Europeans. Says goodbye in Italian. Ciao. Thank you for clarifying. And leaves. Life is really strange. One day you're training with the Lakers in Los Angeles and heading back to your villa in Beverly Hills. Another day you're in flip-flops at an auto grill, chatting with complete strangers in Italy. And look at this photo of skinny Luka. Dare I say, look at that face. He looks thinner. Everything looks great. That's really awesome.
No, it's a good thing. I think this was from a day or two ago ahead of the game on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, like, look, there are a couple of things about this, and I want to elaborate a bit on a point that you made before. One of the things that has really stuck out to me, Luka. Not only, like, we spent a lot of time this week talking about his understanding of the importance of playing for his country. And a bunch of people in the comments of the YouTube section pointed out, like, Slovenia is very little. Like, we're not talking about 15, 20, 30, 35, 40 million people in this country. It's like 2. It's a very little country. And to be involved in this, to be on this stage and have a player of Luka's caliber, it's a really, really big deal. And so Luka gets it. The other thing he gets, and we've seen this over and over and over again since he joined the Lakers, is he gets, like, what it is for people to see him and meet him, be around, whether it's Luka, Giannis, Jokic, like, just the opportunity. Like, you and I have been doing this for a long time. It can be, you are literally trained to not make a big deal and, like, fanboy out when you're, like, standing in the scrum or in the locker room or something like that. You're talking to these guys, like, it's your job to, like, be cool, man. But it's easy to forget, like,
and after a while too. I mean, to be honest, as much as, I mean, you and I have both said many times over the years and on this show, like, the opportunity to speak with Kobe, and outside of, like, a scrum, asking him a question, but, like, have a conversation with him to the side, or sometimes just BS with him about movies or other stuff, like, that is really cool in the sense that Kobe was a really interesting person,
right,
and a really smart guy with a lot of different interests. So it's interesting to talk with him in the way that it would be interesting to talk with any interesting person. But after a while, it really does become very normal for us to have a conversation.
Yeah, I will say
a conversation with Powell. Like, it's normal after a while.
It's normal. It's still, it's like, it's your job. It's a really cool job, but it's still your job. But, like, it can, you can lose touch of the impact that it can have to be around professional athletes, these guys like that are so admired, and for whom a lot of people, they wear the jerseys, they watch the games, they do all these things. And it is always impressive to me when a globally recognized star like Luka gets it. You see him outside hotels. He signs, I mean, basically everything. He signs before games. He will take a picture with random dudes, in Italy, and their friends. Like, he understands the impact that he has. He is very giving to the fan base and all that kind of stuff. And in addition, it's, if you have to choose between the guy who can lead your team to titles and the guy who's just, great in the community and, will sign all the autographs and all that kind of stuff, most people, if they have to pick one, most fans will take the guy who'll bring them titles. That's just being honest. But when you have an opportunity to have both, and that is what the Lakers have in Luka Doncic, it is a very cool thing. It is a reason, when the Lakers talk about building around him and how excited they are and all these kinds of, they are not, it's not just blowing smoke. Like, he is legitimately great with fans.
There's a really interesting dichotomy that, neither one of us knows Luka well at all. He has not been with the team. We have not had many opportunities to speak with him, even in a formal setting, much less anywhere else. But one of the things that I do find, you notice this right away with Luka, and it's really interesting. He is perfectly polite with media, cordial enough. It's very, just very straight ahead, short worded answers. It's not rude. It's certainly not combative the way, say, the exchanges often with Russell Westbrook were. But Luka clearly does not like the media portion of his job. He will do it. He will do it professionally enough, but it's not something that he enjoys. But he loves a stage. He loves being on a stage, being in the spotlight. I don't think he necessarily
from a
loves
basketball standpoint.
Right. That's
like,
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I don't think he necessarily loves being a star, like in terms of being famous, like with the idea of relishing fame or wanting to. I mean, he obviously wants to capitalize on it. He does commercials, he does other stuff, like, but the idea of being famous in and of itself, I don't get a sense appeals inherently to Luka. But if being famous is part of what gets him on that stage, that part of it he loves.
So one more thing that you mentioned in terms of actually looking at Luka's game on Thursday that I want to get to about what's important specifically with his stat lines. We'll do that. And then we'll answer the question, should the Lakers kick the tires with Sacramento on Malik Monk since they seem so determined to get rid of him? We'll do all that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, then waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, and then computer glitch. You lose your spot in the virtual line for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with stressful ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes it easy to get concert tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with the last-minute deals. They are killer. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There's no hidden fees. The Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Real quick before Andy, we get back into the one last thing for Slovenia that I actually am kind of interested in with the what Luka looks like, how he, you talked about the shooting and things like that. Quick overview of what the schedule looks like when the real games begin. It starts on the 28th at 11:30 Pacific against Poland. That's a week from today. Poland, of course, hosting EuroBasket, one of the hosts. And then on the 30th, it's France at 8 in the morning Pacific time. If you really want to see Belgium versus Slovenia on Sunday the 31st, set an alarm. That's 5 a.m. on Sunday the 31st. Tuesday the 2nd of September, 8 a.m. against Iceland. Finally against Israel on the 4th of September, again, 8 a.m. So got to get up early if you want to watch these games. The one thing, there is one thing, I agree with you. I'm not worried about how many three-pointers he makes and this and that, whatever. The thing that I am most interested in seeing is how much he is drawing fouls, how easily he can get to the rim, stuff like that. Because if there is a trend that people have been looking at with Luka over the last couple of seasons that they find a little bit shaky, it's that he is finishing less at the rim now than he did when he was younger. I'm not talking about dunks. I just mean like layups, finishing on those kinds of plays. Less of that over the last couple seasons than earlier in his career. So what you do want to see is Luka getting to the rim, drawing fouls, things like that, getting himself into the paint effectively. So the last two games that he's played in these in this preparation has been in the line over 20 times. So that is a good sign, even if the three-pointers aren't going down. All right, Andy.
Really quick, just for a little bit of clarification, when you're talking about getting to the line and finishing, are you talking purely about the ability to draw fouls? Or are you talking about and one stuff like that? Like when you say just finishing, do you mean through the contact?
Getting into the paint, finishing around the rim, being in a position where they need to foul you because otherwise you'll have a layup, things like that. But just like the stuff that makes you more likely to be going towards the basket and finishing at the basket, as opposed to settling for a step back three-pointer or settling for the mid-range because you can't quite get where you want to be. So that aspect of Luka's game, I think that's probably, if there's one thing that people are most interested in seeing, if the weight loss makes a difference, and the get a little more explosiveness and stuff like that, regaining a little bit of, or at least stopping some of that downward trend that we've seen over the last couple of years in terms of how much he is at and finishing at the rim. So that's something I'm interested in. Russell Westbrook. Sacramento really, really, really wants Russell Westbrook. The way they appear ready to go get him is by trading Malik Monk. Like that, they have decided is the route that they need to take. Now, like they've had Malik on the block for most of the summer, so this part isn't new. But they really seem determined to unload Malik Monk's contract for reasons I am not entirely sure as to why. But of course, haven't been able to do it. But I mean, I'm wondering, like, Lakers, Malik Monk, bench scoring, good guy, likes it here, all that stuff.
Yeah, according to Grant Afseth of Dallas Hoops Journal, quote, the Sacramento Kings have been trying very hard to trade Malik Monk this offseason, but I haven't found a taker, NBA source told Grant Afseth. And this is to specifically trade Monk so they can open up a roster spot for Russell Westbrook. It is not clear from the reporting, at least that I've seen, whether or not this is motivated more by offloading Monk's salary. He is under contract through 2028 with a player option for that final year. All the years are somewhere between around 19 million and 21.5. So it's a pretty reasonable contract, certainly not onerous for a productive player. I don't know if that they also just think Russell Westbrook will be a better fit for what they want to do than Malik Monk, which I find bizarre.
Of course, but the flip side is it's hard to know what they want to do.
Right. Well, it's that is an open-ended statement about the Sacramento Kings. Basically, since roughly the heyday of C-Web and Vlade and Mike Bibby and down the line, without getting too into the weeds about this, because if the Kings are looking to move Monk to open up a roster spot, it means that like a straight 1-for-1 deal, I don't think would be doable for them. To the best of my knowledge, they only have one player who might, Terrence Davis, might not be fully guaranteed for this season, but it could be complicated to make a type of deal that opens up that spot for Monk. It could involve a third team, yada, yada, yada. But without getting into the weeds, just more a discussion of, do you think the Lakers should try to find a way to get Monk to the Lakers? Would it make sense? Also, should the Lakers theoretically be willing to take on the contract of someone like Malik Monk, which could go through 2028? If Monk isn't good enough, who is? Because we've talked before about the reports that they really want to maintain that flexibility with their books and maneuverability, which could mean someone like Monk would not make the cut for an exception.
I find that to be like, that's with whether it's Malik Monk or really anybody. This is the question that I just find most intriguing. Like we've seen enough. I know you've been skeptical of how dedicated they might be, at least to the 2027 part of this, or not the summer of 26, but like really trying to keep maximum flexibility into the summer of 2027. The hypothetical Jokic, the hypothetical Giannis summer, and so on. And I think, too much is going to happen between now and then to really say definitively what the Lakers are going to do. But I think it's pretty clear at this point, at the very least in the short term, they are not adding anyone that's taking them past, at the very least, at the most next season, certainly not 2 years. Like for me,
real quick, to the best of our knowledge, though, certainly in the reporting or anything either one of us have heard behind the scenes or whatever, they have not had the opportunity to obtain somebody as good as Malik Monk.
Maybe that may be true, but And look, I mean, who do we have this conversation last week? We were talking about, would you? Oh, it was extending Rui. Like, would you extend Rui at, it's 3 years between 18 and 20 million based on his current production, all that kind of stuff, understanding that it would eat into some of that money and some of that flexibility? My answer to that was yes, I would do that. Would I acquire, if I could figure out how, would I acquire, Malik Monk and make it work, knowing that I'm going to have probably, at the very least, I have to be willing to pay him for 2 more summers? Yes, I would do that. And the reason is because I think it is a better way to build a team to have players than to have space. And these guys are not prohibitively expensive. I don't think they are, although apparently Malik Monk is harder to trade than maybe you might think, but they're not prohibitively expensive. They're good players. They are young, both of them under 30. And so I prefer to have people rather than maximum cap space, especially for free agents that I just don't think are going to be around and available. Giannis, maybe, but Jokic isn't going anywhere. I'd be stunned if Jokic leaves and they let him go. A couple other things about this, sort of the hypothetical, and then we got to talk a little bit about the whole Russ part of it. But we'll do all that next. I think, Andy, the Lakers they've been burned. I think the Lakers very aggressively re-signed players after after being able to trade Westbrook. The Lakers liked what they saw. They went on a Western Conference Finals run. It looked like they had this core that was worth bringing back, and it just hasn't worked out. They haven't been able to have the type of flexibility with the contracts in a way that I'm talking about. Like it is fair to say, like, that was kind of the idea. This is what we were talking about. You have players in different slots. You can trade them. You bring in Gabe Vincent, you have this guy, you have that guy. And it just hasn't worked to where the players they have the type of value and haven't played well enough that you could use them to acquire the players you need rather than doing it through free agency. That said, it is really important, in defense of what the Lakers are doing, to remember cap space, when you have that much of it, is not just about signing free agents. When you have that much of it, you are one of the teams that can trade, players into your cap space. You can absorb guys. You can make runs at a restricted free agent. Like, look around the league this year and see what's happening. I'm not saying you want these guys specifically, although maybe you do. A guy like Josh Giddey, a guy like Cam Thomas, the Kuminga thing, if that's your particular taste. And so you have a lot of optionality when you have that space. And I can see why the Lakers would say, that's what we want, the maximum amount of flexibility. I get it. I just think it never quite plays out the way that you want. The other question I want to ask you real quick. In theory, the guy who would make it so Malik Monk wouldn't necessarily feel that necessary, to me, is Dalton. Like, if you had a lot of confidence in Dalton as a bench scorer, a floor spacer, a bench scorer, a little bit of a different player in some ways than Malik, but they would serve similar roles, I think.
Similar-ish. I don't.
Enough.
I'll get into why. I don't find them quite as similar as the way you're laying out, but continue.
Okay, well, that's kind of one of my questions. Is like, if you had more confidence in Dalton as a prospect and as somebody who's going to be able to produce for you this year, would you be less inclined to try to, bring in Malik Monk's 15 to 18 points a game?
Not necessarily in terms of making it Dalton versus Monk, just because there's elements of Malik Monk's game that for the time being Dalton doesn't replicate, and I'm not sure that he will. For example, Malik's turned into a pretty good playmaker. Like, for somebody who is not a point guard, the last couple of seasons he's averaged 5 to 6 assists a game.
No, yeah, I agree.
And Dalton is way off from that. Like, we've seen a bit of putting the ball on the floor from Dalton, a little bit of playmaking, stuff like that. But And to be fair to Dalton, it took Malik Monk a few years before he could do that. He really actually started blossoming his one season with the Lakers along these lines. I think that's when he really started to come into his own a bit as a playmaker, and then it really started to flourish with Sacramento. But that's something that you would immediately get with Monk that you're not going to get next season with Dalton. Dalton also, I think, would really have to improve overall as a scorer to match what you're going to get from Monk, just because beyond the outside shooting, Dalton Connect is a better outside shooter now than Malik Monk has really been his whole career. Malik's had a couple seasons in the high 30s, but for the most part, he's been like a league average three-point shooter. Like his best year, I think, his best couple seasons as a three-point shooter, one of them has been with the Lakers. Like for the most part, he's been a mid-30s-ish three-point shooter. Last season, about 32%. So in that respect, I don't consider them overlapping quite the same way. I see it in a lot of ways more of a Rui type of overlap, just because
despite the difference in positionality.
Right, because Rui is a scorer who is as accomplished as Malik. Malik, I think, is more forceful around the rim, but Rui's a better outside shooter. They're both kind of three-level scorers in their own right. Rui's become a very good cutter, stuff like that. And, Malik is a better playmaker, but Rui can handle certain physicality matchups or things like that Malik can't do. And between the two, Rui's a better defender, no matter what you think of Rui's defense and
not good, but he's better.
Yeah. He's a better defender than Malik. But the question that I think is most pressing in this, in terms of, would you sacrifice that type of flexibility for Malik, or for a Malik caliber player, maybe somebody you consider 10% better than Malik, is the idea of how much better you want to be right now versus down the road. I also thought it was interesting when you said that the Lakers have been burned at times with some of these contracts. In particular, too, I think that the offseason, the 2020, the offseason heading into the season that just finished, the summer of 2024,
right,
when everybody opted into their player options, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Cam Reddish, D'Angelo Russell, LeBron, the one that they clearly expected and hoped for. I think that is another example of them picturing flexibility that doesn't come. And, other than Cam Reddish, I honestly don't think any of the player options they gave those guys were indefensible or pretty strange. At the time when they got Jackson Hayes, the big man market was really thin. They needed to get him over here for a veterans minimum. When they got Christian Wood, it was considered a steal for a veterans minimum. I just feel like, to the point that you were making about being burned, and I think kind of risk averse because of that, I understand that you don't want to box yourself into bad scenarios, but at the same time, you can't in some ways box yourself out of pretty good ones because you're worried that they won't be perfect. And that isn't even so much me endorsing the idea of really trying to find like a third team or whatever configuring necessary to bring in Malik Monk. I just think it sort of supports the idea you're getting at of, you can't be scared to do things because it gets in the way of the utopian vision that you have that may never arrive anyway.
It's true. And to be clear, I think the inclination, I don't think this is the primary reason, or even close to the primary reason, why the Lakers are approaching things the way they are. They are doing this because this is how they do things. This is how they have always done it. They have always prized flexibility and cap space in this way. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But this is the historical pattern. It's not just, I think they're scared because they couldn't, they've been unable to move Jared Vanderbilt. It's just when you start to put all these things together, I think it's, and I just think, and we'll leave. It's just to do all of this, to try to figure out to dump a good, like for Russ, don't get it.
Well, but then again, look at their current roster right now, Sacramento. Their foundation is Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Dennis Schroeder, whether the fifth guy is Malik or Russ, it's just a weird hodgepodge of like one way offensive B to B plus level players like Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray. Godspeed to these guys trying to defend waves arms around everything you're going to need to with those
it's
guys.
such a weird team because they have too many good players to be objectively terrible, but they have way too many weird pieces to be good.
You look at that and you go, I don't understand what you're trying to do other than, I guess, avoid a rebuild. Other than that, I don't understand what you're trying to build at all.
It's Sacramento, man. That's just how they go. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out.
Forget it, Jake. It's Sacramento.
It's Sacramento. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 36,000 subscribers to the channel. Hey, you have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.